Welcome to Fast Politics, Evan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you to talk about how this insane moment in American political life.
That's your evergreen intro, right? You use that for every episode.
Pretty much. I think today, sometimes American politics is just really disappointing, and sometimes it's really worrying. But right now, we're in this period. Like, I feel like the first 9 months of Trump's administration, it was like, oh shit, this American democracy experiment may be over. And now I feel like, oh no, these guys are doing what they did last time.
Yeah, well, I was a C-SPAN analyst on election night. So I sat there all night and watching the
Wait, are
returns come
you
in.
trying to make me jealous?
No, yes, exactly. But no, the fun thing about doing it on
You
C-SPAN is
were
all
on, I'm like obsessed with C-SPAN and I
oh, it's
watch it all
great.
the
I mean, you
time.
take calls and everything. And the fun thing about it is that it's like you're just kind of like alone in the studio with the host, and you're watching all of the
And also, no
the
one is watching it but me.
That's right. Well, we had some callers. We did okay. My mom watched, I think, but they do a lot of they show all the speeches and everything. So it was fascinating for me because that night was sort of, as you say, it was this moment of like, oh right, like politics are actually still happening. Like this administration has
Right.
failed to message itself because heading into that cycle, right? The whole idea was this administration is so different. This is a different kind of politics.
Right.
They're going to be able to stay in power forever. They're going to
Right.
win every election.
Yep.
Democrats have nothing. They can't do anything. And then sort of every different kind of style of Democrat, basically a Democrat on the ballot effectively won all over
By
the
a
place. And it
lot.
was just, it was a strange moment of like, oh, okay, I guess the laws of gravity do apply. And then, of course, the most hilarious part about that is that I'm like home that Sunday or whatever Sunday recent Sunday, doing my newsletter that I have to do for notice. And like, as we're watching this implosion of the Democrats' shutdown strategy happen in real time, and there was another moment where all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh my god, the Democrats, they're doing it, they're blowing it." It's this, oh my god, and we're back in this idea that like politics is broken forever and the Democrats are blowing
Right.
it. And then where we sit today, the president looks completely feckless. He's had his own business yelling at him about H-1B visas, yelling at him about
Mhm.
Epstein, yelling at him about the things he's been saying and doing. And the Democrats, which like 3 days ago were like forever gone and destroyed because of this shutdown thing. That's like ancient history now. Now we're back in this world in which Trump is once again bad and has no control and can't handle anything. So you're right. Like, this is like one of the wildest roller coasters I had been on, and I think it does sort of end with Trump is like not doing that great, and his administration is
Right.
not doing a great job of communicating or messaging itself very well.
He's also, my man is underwater on all the things, you
Yeah,
know?
look, the most interesting thing, I've been tracking this since the beginning of the administration, right? Because the main thing this administration tried to do and pitch, just like a lot of administrations do, was 2024 was an economy election. This president said, I'm an economy guy. We're going to do a bunch of economy stuff. And I've been tracking the entire time kind of the messaging that they've been trying to do. And it has mostly been, look, we know what we're doing. People are going to tell you this is bad, but it's actually really good. You got to hang on, you got to trust us, and you got to believe us. The
Right.
polls have shown that that's not really been working. And now this president has reverted to the kind of economic messaging that was just the Biden economic messaging of like, actually, you, the American people, are wrong. Everything is great.
Right.
We're doing great. Everything rocks. And that is kind of a funny full circle moment because you're in this situation where you're just looking at this. I've talked to Biden officials throughout the administration, like sort of like from the beginning of this, like you can go back and look at the reporting I was doing in January to now. And I ran the story a bunch of times of like officials from the Biden administration being like, oh my God, like they're saying the same stuff that we said. They're doing the same stuff that we said
Right.
because this central challenge of like we have these basic economic problems that will probably take a long like need long-term solutions, but the public wants short-term solutions.
Right.
This guy was supposed to be able to figure that out because the whole thing about Trump is he's such a great communicator. He's so well trusted and so well believed that he's the guy people will follow into hell because he
Right.
promises them at the other side things will be good. And that is 1000% not happening. And so you're watching them flail around the same way that other administrations who are face the same problem flail around, which is that
Yeah.
like they have no way to explain to people
Why
what to
things are
do
getting more
about these
expensive.
prices and things like that.
But I do think that a real difference between Trumpism and normal administrations of any stripe is that Trump did tariffs, and
Mhm.
tariffs made things more expensive. So, like, he ran saying, like, "I'm gonna make bacon cheaper," and then almost immediately did everything he could to make things more expensive. Now, I don't think he thought that's what he was doing, but that is a direct consequence of the tariffs.
That's right. And I will tell you, they had no plan for this. We had been talking to them. This other thing I've been reporting on since the beginning of the administration. Okay. Because I kept asking them, from like as a political reporter perspective. So what's your plan for when prices go up because of tariffs? What's your plan? What are you going to say? What are you going to do? And what they would say to you repeatedly over and over was, they're not going to go up. They're not going up. It's not going to happen. They're not going to go up. They're not going to go up. Lately, they've been saying things like, well, look, a little bit of short term pain, but they haven't been doing that right along and they can't. And now they're talking about me dialing back some of these tariffs, just switch over. But I'll say the other major difference is that they don't appear to have a message that at all connects with what people are actually feeling and thinking about. Like a lot of things with the Biden administration, they did a lot of stuff that actually sort of like was sort of what experts and a lot of folks think is sort of the right thing to do to bring some manufacturing jobs back, raise wages. You can look at the inflation in the rest of the whole world and the inflation of America, and it was like kind of better in America during that inflationary period, et cetera. They couldn't really communicate that because of various and sundry reasons. Primarily, Biden was not the best person to be communicating it. The Trump administration is like face planting wildly with its attempts. Like, I think that really fascinated me that happened recently was all of a sudden they're like, oh, what about a 50-year mortgage, guys? It's going to be a cheaper because it's longer. It's going to be 50 years. So, like, it's cheaper to get it because you have to pay less money every year. Brilliant. And, like, immediately, MAGA world and sort of folks who are like the populists, right, said, like, what are you talking about? Like, you want people to pay more money to the banks? You want there to be more debt? Like, this is a solution that, like, when it was rolled out, it was like strutting around, like, aha, we got it. Like, da 50-year mortgage.
Mhm.
It's like, immediately everybody's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And you've not heard about it again, right? Like this is
Right.
the kind of thing that's happening is that the reality of the situation is they have got to get, they get an affordability message that actually like takes on some of this stuff like prices and things like that and some of the structural stuff that they're just not that interested in. Tariffs were supposed to do it, but tariffs again makes everything more expensive right now. Theoretically, down the road, it doesn't. And they needed Trump to be the guy to carry the public forward with them, and it's not happening. One, the taco thing, right? He kept flipping around on these tariffs anyway. Two, they can't stand the heat, which no administration can stand either, which is that like
Right.
they're doing this. Well, holy crap, we could just drop the tariffs and maybe prices will go down. And that's
Mhm.
what they're talking about doing. But the healthcare thing, they have no plan on the healthcare thing as they've never had, right? Democrats had a plan out. They've talked about it. They have an idea of how to bring healthcare costs down. In this particular case, this ACA subsidy thing that would shut down what's about was like literally a moment where you could sign a bill and bring costs down. Republicans don't want to do it. They're trapped in their own kind of world on this. And I think it was sort of always coming, but everybody just thought that these magicians in Trump's White House, led by Trump himself, would somehow have some sort of magic beans that could, you know, get them through this. They don't have it, and now they look like people who are just kind of like grabbing anything they can get their hands on, like a 50-year mortgage that nobody wants.
Yes, the 50-year mortgage that nobody wants. What you see with this administration when you see them start to fall apart, what I think is so interesting is you see what good messaging looks like and bad messaging looks like. For example, Epstein. So
Mhm.
this administration is on the run from Epstein, right? And there was this dump yesterday of thousands of emails. They had things like, Trump in Epstein in Palm Beach, Thanksgiving 2017. Now, did they have a meal together? Who knows? But there are emails that say they were both there at the same time after Trump was already president, which means that Trump's timetable, if these emails are true, is incorrect, right? That his timetable of not speaking to the guy since 2004 is bullshit. So they're just the dump after dump after dump of emails and this one and that one and a
Yeah.
lot of them that say Trump is stupid. Like a
Very,
lot,
yeah, very
right?
prolific emailing. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of typos. What are your take? What's your? I want to talk about the messaging on the Epstein, but first I want you to talk about your take on the Epstein emails.
Well, look, the Epstein emails themselves, I don't know that what we had seen, like you mentioned this idea of like the timeline changing and things like that. I think all you have to know about whether or not the administration was worried about more Epstein stuff coming out is because of how worried they are about more Epstein
Yeah,
stuff coming out. They're constantly,
right.
they drag Lauren Boebert to the Situation Room to try and get her to kill this discharge petition. It didn't
Likely
work.
the first and last time that Lauren Boebert will ever be invited to the Situation Room.
No, I don't know. I mean, never say never. 2028's not that far away, Molly. I mean,
Shut up. Why do
come
you
on.
hate me?
But
A
no, look,
Sarah Palin Lauren Boebert ticket.
no, I think it's a Boebert MTG. I think it's like it's time to get the space lasers onto the sky. I think is what
Do
that'll
not
be what they
use
want.
my queen's name in vain. Continue.
But anyway, so you only have to know that they don't want them out because they're working so hard not to get them out in ways that are really embarrassing. I mean, they tried to pressure lawmakers and they couldn't get them to do it. On the messaging front, I will tell you, I spent yesterday or the day after these emails came out, I just sort of watched every daily stream of, and emailed and checked with my colleagues, reached out to every single one of the right wing influencers that got that binder back in February from Pam Bondi, the Epstein binder that like
Did
completely kicked off this entire thing. It was such a disaster, right?
amazing. You
And
reached out
so
to every single one of them?
I reached out to every single one of the well, we reached out to every single one or watched their stream because they all do daily streams and stuff. So
Right.
we checked in to see what they were all doing and saying, right?
And what were they
And in
saying?
general, what they're saying is that like, look, these emails don't change the story. Trump is like not part of this. He's not the bad guy. These emails are like he's not the bad
But
guy.
he's in
And
all
like
the emails.
their view on the substance is that this doesn't actually incriminate him more. And look, these emails, they don't say anything. They're not definitive, right? Definitive is that birthday book, right? That's like, oh
Right.
wow, this is
It does
very
it
bizarre. But
they
like the
do
emails
say
themselves,
things like he knew about the girls.
yeah, but like, you look at the context, so like whatever. This is what they said. But on the
Right.
messaging front, I will tell you, on the messaging front, they are absolutely baffled. One guy said, I don't know why he keeps using the word hoax. I think he doesn't know what the word hoax means. Like,
Wow.
everything that the White House is doing to try to shut this down. Trump talking about a hoax. They were not into the discharge petition. I will say, like, you can look at some messaging. Like, I don't know what the White House is doing in terms of talking to these folks. My colleague Jasmine is pretty sure that they are fairly regularly reaching out to the right wing media sphere on this issue.
The White
Those
House.
Yeah, it's not like those influencers were egging the Republicans on to break with the president and vote for the bill to get these more Epstein files out, but they were baffled at the messaging, very confused, and really, like I said, this whole thing about he doesn't know what a word hoax is. Like, why you keep saying hoax? Like, you're in the emails. This is real. What you've told people is that you didn't do anything wrong, and you're not part of any criminal. And the emails don't seem to change that conversation. Why not just let them out? Why not just talk more about that and put that more out as opposed to this weird thing of like, this is not a real story. This is not a real story. So that's from people who like desperately
Want.
want that to be
Yeah.
real. They're the
Yeah.
ones who are saying Trump is really messing up this messaging. So that to me was really fascinating. And I think there was a really illuminating as to where this moment is, that like they really don't know how to deal with this because they've got a guy at the top who keeps saying, what are you talking? Hoax, fake. They're making this up. And like nobody thinks that.
Right.
Everybody wants to see these emails. And they're not able to get out in front of it because they have this weird message of like, this is not this is a waste of everybody's time. And like, which by the way, it may end up very well being, but like, who doesn't
My
want to see these at this point? Who doesn't want to see them now?
My favorite problematic messaging problem involves Megyn Kelly, who had a clip where she was saying, "A young 15-year-old is not the same as a 5-year-old. Live your life so you are never defending the difference between having sex with teenagers and having sex with toddlers. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah,
Fair?"
it's a good word to live. I do have that tattooed on my arm. I think it's a good rule of thumb. Look, I mean, this is
How did she mental gymnastics herself into a moment where she was defending that?
so I think I don't really know how to get in the head of Megyn Kelly particularly, but I will, this is this thing of how they're all trying to pretzel themselves to deal with this. And um, you know, this was
Not
the
good.
this is the very like only like the weirdest libertarians you've ever met in your life are the ones who do the like, well, actually,
Right.
pedophile is this, and
Right,
actually,
right,
right?
yeah.
Like it doesn't really particularly matter very much. Like, but Megyn
Once you're
Kelly has sort of
down this road, it's
yeah,
like yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
This is one of those stop incriminating yourselves conversations,
Right,
But
right, right.
I think that it's because they're in this really tough spot because they have nothing to grab onto because nobody like the messaging of this thing is not like, yeah, put them all out. We're fine. Like, no,
Right,
that's just
right,
like, we're
right, right.
fine, but please don't release anything else. And also, like, look, it's been interesting because Megyn Kelly, I think, is representative of something going on in the conservative movement right now. She was the one who really clued me in. I watched her stream and clued me into all the post Charlie Kirk assassination talk about the conspiracies and, you
About
know,
Israel or about
exactly Israel and the idea. Like she was the one that clued me into all that because she was the one talking about Candace Owens being a genius and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, so she's anti-Semitic too,
Well, I don't know anything about that. She says that she's not at all. She strongly
but
does
she
not say that.
does think Israel might be responsible.
Well, no, she had a whole clip that was um talking about Candace. This is right after the assassination. Things have, there's things have changed since then. But she talked about how there was this sort of meeting that Charlie Kirk was supposed to have had at Bill Ackman's house, and like this, and how it was the whole idea was that Charlie Kirk was sort of
Right,
moving into an anti-Israel position. And this is all just very worthwhile to know, all very worthwhile to understand, and this is a really reasonable conversation to have. And like that is a sort of growing conversation as well. And so when you see Megyn Kelly saying something that sounds like really like the sort of farthest right take on
right,
stuff, it's because like that far right is really gaining a lot of traction right now.
right,
At the same time, the White House is trying to figure out its way through this, you know, really self-imposed thicket that if I mean, it sort of grew a thicket and jumped into it when it comes to this, to this Epstein stuff. I mean, I don't know. The binders are the perfect example of that, where it's like they didn't release all the files, but said that they did. And like the whole thing was really, really wild. But like, I think this is all swirling in a moment right now where like just suddenly this whole political project does not seem that standing on such a firm ground right now.
right,
They're talking about, they're sort of in this conspiracy world. They're talking about who counts as a pedophile. These are big
right.
names like Megyn Kelly. You know, even the other people are talking about is the president screwing up, talking about what a hoax is. It is kind of like a moment where if you were in politics, if you were running for something right now, you would not want to be in their camp.
Yeah,
And that is like a rare moment that has not been true since sort of November of last year.
yeah. Oh, man. It's all happening.
It is. I mean, it
It
really is
is.
like a very, very, very rapid flip, but it's getting weirder and weirder, Molly. I think it's like, I
I
don't
think
know
you
what to held
mispronounced
on to.
stupider and more depressing
I
for
don't know. We get to have
weirder.
another shutdown conversation and like just right after we
It's
get back
coming up.
from New Year's break. So, I mean, if you like that,
Thank you, Evan.
of course, Molly, thank you. Please have me on as it gets weirder and weirder.
Yes.